Yeah,
awesome.
Right.
Thank you so much for, first off, coming here on a Friday. Thanks for ditching work, all of you, or school, if that is. Cannot tell the ages of literally anyone in this room.
Or sleep if you were at Pose last night, like I was.
Yeah. So thanks for that, and then also thanks for coming to like an early panel, a 10 a.m. panel.
Yeah.
So just waking up early or getting here early. Like if you're Dave, he drove down this morning. So yeah, like. With all the snow and stuff, just thanks for being here.
Thank you.
And coming to a title panel like Windows Mixed Reality. I hope it was the Tales from the Trenches that got you in here because we got some tales for you.
Yeah.
But first, let's introduce who are we and why are we here talking to you. My name is Adina Shanholtz, and you can find me on Twitter and Mastodon. I'm on the Octodon Federation. And I've been working in mixed reality, yes?
And you flew past that. What is Mastodon?
Oh, Mastodon. Oh, well, if you're tired of all the Twitter Nazis, you can go to an alternative open source social network where the idea is it's all the best features of Twitter and microblogging with the federations of email. So you have different, just because you have like an email address at Gmail doesn't mean you also have one at Hotmail. But people can talk to each other with those different email addresses. So I am on octodon.social, which is a different federation, but can talk to the people on mastodon.social. So open source, if you have a problem with it, go fix it yourself. Like, it's really great. So also, like, the dude who made it is German, and so Nazis are literally illegal to have on it. So, you know, off to a great start. So you know, made with good kin. And also, I like it because like the federations can block each other. So if someone does spin up a federation of Nazis, you can literally just ban them. Like just be like, nope, my admin says nope. I hate everyone.
I like that the phrase "a federation of Nazis" is real.
It's great. Like, so I like Mastodon.
It's a real thing.
That was my pitch, nice and derailed. And you can find me on it. I talk. I've been trying to move away from Twitter. But anyway, I do mixed reality, and I've made some apps, and I can give you my GitHub if you're interested in trying out some of the apps. Or if you want to learn how to build mixed reality applications, I also have some tutorials on there too. I guess, going in order.
Yeah, in order of the slides.
Yep.
My name is Sarah Sexton. You can find me on Twitter at Salia. I've been thinking about joining Mastodon, but I haven't gotten around to it yet. I've heard it's good. I should do it. I've heard it's good. Heard good things. We all work at Microsoft. I am based out of Chicago, so I do work with mixed reality also, as we all do. And you can find me on GitHub at my name, which is capital S Sarah, capital S Sexton, but no space. If you want to find some of the things I've done on GitHub, I attend a lot of hackathons to help students at universities do HoloLens related projects. And so I'll bring a HoloLens to a school and we'll stay up all night. We'll have like 24 hours of trying to make a HoloLens app. So I do a lot of game development in Unity and C#. So I am sort of a mentor or a tutor when it comes to helping people find success using Microsoft platforms. And I have a lot of fun helping people be successful with the HoloLens. And we have so many different roles and opportunities that we do here at Microsoft. This is definitely one of the more fun ones. So thank you for having me here. Glad to be here.
Hi, my name is Amanda Lange, and I'm also I have the only working. I have a louder mic. I'll lean back a little so I'm not blasting everyone. I'm on the Philadelphia area, so I've been in Philly for about 4 or 5 years now. My Twitter handle is Second Truth. It has an underline, so I'm thinking about changing it, but I always say that maybe before I print my new business cards. I've been working with mixed reality and HoloLens in particular since the HoloLens was actually launched. I was one of the early adopters on HoloLens and bought it and started working with it pretty early on. So before that, I actually worked with Michigan State on some mixed reality / AI projects, but that was before there was really hardware for it. So I have a lot of stories about that if you're interested in like the early days of this technology, which I could get into later.
All right. My name is Shahid Chaudhry. So I'm actually local here in the DC area. So for those of you who are local or come here often, I'm a good person to contact if you're just wanting to learn more about technologies or try something out. So today we won't have time to hand out some of these devices, but you can come and find me later. My Twitter handle, @ShahidC, which is also my GitHub user ID. So if you're interested in getting started with some code, I do mixed reality and HoloLens, but also I work on web apps and bots and some other different apps at Microsoft as well. So you can find a bunch of my code on there.
All of us are technical evangelists at Microsoft, and all of us are from different cities. I'm from New York, Chicago, Philly, DC. So we are spread out all over. So I hope that all of you fit into one of those categories. And if not, we probably have an evangelist close to you. And these days, we've been all over doing all sorts of different stuff, but our job has us now working a lot with companies to build apps to, I guess, benefit their business, or we work on projects where we are doing like groundbreaking technology. This technology is we have a problem that has not been solved yet. How can we solve it? And then we take these learnings and we bring them to you. And so we basically structured this panel around our best practices and learnings, as well as horror stories, because that's always really fun around mixed reality. But first, let us talk about what is mixed reality. Why are we here talking to you about this thing, and why are we calling it this? I have a fun video that shows off the new immersive headsets. So I like that video for a number of reasons, because first off, who would ever go into an all-white room, ever?
I was just thinking that. I'm like, I always wear my all-white outfit to go into my all-white room to put on my headset.
God, I'd be afraid that, like, I would stain it just by existing in it. But it's great for making a white screen, green screen, which I'm really tired of taking pictures of people in the headsets going, and without actually being able to see what they're looking at. And that solved a lot of the problem by, like, here is her being in it. Yeah. Okay, so anyway, let's talk about what is mixed reality and why we're calling it by this name anyway.
All right, I will be happy to jump in and explain this. These are some of my favorite slides. So if I may direct your attention to the Venn diagram, thanks to Windows 10 and its capability to understand you and your world, we can blend the realities of the physical and the digital worlds. So on the one hand, you have the physical reality where you are all existing and breathing right now, sitting in your chairs. And in the digital reality, that's when you look at a screen, it's what you see made out of pixels or maybe voxels. And mixed reality, I mean, I think we all know, do we know what voxels are?
I see, like, people actually shaking their heads.
Fun story, a pixel is a two-dimensional picture element. It's a square on a screen. A voxel is a three-dimensional volume element. So instead of a square, it's a cube. That's really all it is.
That's actually really interesting. I did not know that.
You're welcome.
Think Minecraft, right?
So speaking of coining new phrases, the mixed reality term was actually coined in 1994 in a white paper. And so this concept is not new. The point is that, like, this has been around, like, people have been thinking of mixed reality since the early 90s. But what we can do today is actually enable consumers to purchase something that has a complete offering across a very wide range of head-mounted displays and headsets, ranging from fully immersive virtual reality to fully untethered holographic computing. So what I want to explain in the next slide here, after we get past the Venn diagram, is the mixed reality spectrum. So defining the mixed reality spectrum is how you can tell the difference between virtual reality, augmented reality, and mixed reality. So
I know you're all thinking it. Everyone thinks it. Everyone thinks we've made up the term mixed reality. Anytime anyone comes out with something new, they got to distinguish themselves. But we promise we didn't make it up. It's been around for a while, and it's actually more like a spectrum.
Yes, definitely a spectrum. So if you're thinking about developing apps for mixed reality, it's very useful to know this information. So on the left side of the spectrum, we have the physical reality in which we humans exist. And on the right side, we have digital reality. So if you want to think about like bringing a hologram into the real world, like maybe a Star Wars Jedi conference where they have the holograms, but everyone else is in the room with the chairs, that is taking something from the digital reality and implanting it into the physical reality. Vice versa, if you wanted to like take something physical and put yourself into somewhere digital, that's a lot more like virtual reality, like the video we just watched where she was completely immersed in something. So wide range all across the spectrum. To get into more detail about that, let's talk about all the things that are in between here. Everything in the middle is mixed reality, or MR, and it blends physical and digital worlds to produce new environments where physical and digital objects coexist and can be interacted with as if all of them were real. So when we're using the HoloLens, we like to say that all these holograms are just like real objects, but they're made out of light and sound instead of actual matter. So that's a fun way to think about it. When you think augmented reality, personally, I think of Pokemon Go. You have your phone, you hold up the screen, it activates the camera, and it looks like there's something in your phone screen because it's using the camera. But you have to like look through a pane of glass in order to see it.
Also, like, you could turn off the camera and it would do the same thing. So it's not actually like interacting with the physical world at all.
Mm-hmm. Right, and it's a lot less augmented reality at that point. It's really more just a mobile game when you do that. And on the other side, we've got virtual reality. So when I think of augmented reality, it's me like looking through a pane of glass and seeing something augmented. Like the Nintendo 3DS had those AR cards for a while. Virtual reality is instead of looking through a pane of glass, like you have something opaque wrapped around your head, like a helmet. You have a headset on. You cannot see the real world. You might trip over a wire because you can't see where you're going. That's virtual.
And bump into a wall.
Bump into walls, accidentally poke someone. Yes.
Have you seen the video of the guy like rock climbing and he falls down, then he falls down in the real world?
Oh.
Yeah, it's pretty good.
So yes. Okay, so augmented reality, you can see everything around you. You're just like looking at a screen. Virtual reality, you cannot see your physical world. You are completely immersed in a virtual world. And somewhere in the middle, which is rather new, is Windows mixed reality holographic headsets. Like the HoloLens is closer on the augmented reality side of the spectrum. And the mixed reality immersive headsets, these are opaque. You can't see through these. So I would like to point out that these completely obscure your vision. So all you see are the pixels inside the screen and voxels. And when you put the headset on, it's actually kind of like a pair of sunglasses or a visor. You can see through it into the real world. And it projects light onto your eyes, creating holograms. So instead of you looking at your phone to see an augmentation in the reality that you're looking at in the physical world, you're wearing it on your head, you can see through it, and you also see holograms. So that's kind of why it's a revolutionary form of input. It's a paradigm shift in the way we use computers. It's a really big deal. I'm really excited about HoloLenses for what I hope are obvious reasons. These are some pretty darn cool devices.
So I also want to take the chance to specifically call out the Windows Mixed Reality platform. We kind of named these the same thing, made it a little confusing, but Windows Mixed Reality specifically to like separate it from the regular type of mixed reality, which other things can fit into. For example, room scale VR like the Vive technically fits into our definition of mixed reality. But Windows Mixed Reality, our platform specifically requires perception of environmental awareness and a number of people, places, or things that are both digital and physical. So having a little bit of both, the way that Sarah described it, the Star Wars conference, and the virtual reality thing, like a mixture of both of those with environmental awareness makes our platform. But wait, Sarah, didn't you just say that this was completely occluded and you couldn't say you couldn't see anything?
I did say that.
So how is that mixed reality?
Do you mean inside-out tracking?
I mean, well, it's a number of things. Insider tracking is one of them, which Shahid will go into in just a second. But also, well, I guess I'll spoilers. So go ahead.
Spoiler alert. So as you can see, I have a couple of devices here, and you probably noticed this one is a very long wire over here. So the main difference between these is the obvious that this one is not a self-contained device. It works with your gaming computer. It could be a laptop or a PC tower, what have you. So you can use your existing machine. We're also selling bundles of headsets plus devices. But so you heard this term inside-out tracking. A lot of the things we learned with developing HoloLens over the years is that this is a self-contained device. It is transparent, which makes the development experience easy. You can literally have it on and type in your keyboard and then walk up and walk away. When you give it to your customers to wear it, they can walk around an entire building and not trip over. They're not going to bump into walls. If they choose to bump into walls, that's up to them, but you don't have to. But you can interact with the walls, right? So with this, you have all these sensors all around it. Figures out where the room is. You can interact with your fingers, similar to Tom Cruise in Minority Report. See, he's pulling his fingers, doing this and that. You can do all that with the HoloLens, right? And
like Tony Stark.
Exactly.
Oh, God. Making the new elements.
So over here with this one, when you're occluded, we take some of the lessons you have from inside-out tracking, and it sees where the room is. So you can get a digital version of that room as well. So let's say you're seeing only your VR world. You don't have to bump into walls necessarily because you'll see a digital representation of that wall if the app chooses to show it to you. And that is a way to bridge the gap between all the VR devices we discussed earlier and some of these new devices that are coming in between.
Yeah, and a big part of how that technology works, correct me if I'm wrong, is it uses infrared. It blasts an infrared beam and detects where the walls and surfaces are.
Actually, I think with this device, so this can sense boundaries. That's also one of the biggest things that distinguishes this from other VR devices is it senses the walls. It'll say, hey, nope, that's your boundary of the physical world. Even though you could, in the digital world, keep walking, you probably shouldn't. So there are two cameras here, but they're black and white. So it creates a contrast map, and that creates the depth perception that gives us the boundaries. I don't know if this has infrared. This one definitely has two black and white sensors, though.
That one's really new. I haven't had a chance to play with it, but sometimes if you turn it on, you might see a dim red light, and that's kind of a giveaway.
So, as you heard, it's news, and there are a variety of these devices. So, in some of the flyers that we're giving out, one of them has a bunch of videos for HoloLens itself. You can check that out later on your phone. I have some short URLs for that, the hardware, and some of the interesting stories from our partners. Because what use is this hardware unless you can do some cool stuff with it, right? And in addition to this blue headset from Acer, a bunch of our partners have been developing a bunch of other headsets as well. And you'll find a bunch of videos on there. It tells you more about all of our devices.
I just tried the Odyssey, and it's supposed to be the luxury experience, and oh my god, it is so luxury. It was totally as hype as I thought it was going to be. But what was that?
Samsung.
Yeah. Oh, Samsung Odyssey. Yeah. Apparently, they name multiple things Odyssey, which is very confusing.
So this is kind of a busy slide, so I won't make you read all of those, but I'll highlight a couple of things here. When it talks about being an untethered computer and having transparent lenses, I wanted to recap what I had said earlier. It makes the development experience and the user experience very unique. It lets you walk around with it, lets you develop things while you have the headset on. And the battery life on it is pretty good. People ask me, how long does the battery last? And sometimes I don't know, because I charge the device and put it in my bag weeks later, based on how long it's been in sleep mode. It's still working. It's not like one of those old Windows laptops you may have had where you close it, put it in your backpack. Next time you open it up, it's on fire and it's already depleted, right? So we've all been there, or we've seen it. So another thing at the very bottom says spatial sound. And these little cool things down here, these two orange speakers, they provide the perception of spatial sound where if there's sounds happening around you, you can actually hear it. You say, oh, it's coming from over there. And those two speakers make it happen. I think you had a question?
You can totally wear them with glasses.
Yeah.
So they have two of those, like the little nose bridge thing. One's a little longer, one's a little shorter.
Yeah, Shahid, if you can hold that up. The weight is not supposed to rest on the bridge of your nose. You're supposed to put most of the weight on the cushioned headband.
Yeah, the nose thing is really more of a backup in case it slips. It should pinch on your head and ride a little high. People can't wear it too low. They can't see. They have to squint like this. So you actually have to want to wear it a little bit high. So it does work with glasses.
This thing is like a friggin' feat of engineering here. It's counterbalanced so that although it looks like really heavy from the front, you should be able to adjust it so that you can not just see, you can also pull it away from you, which is also really nice. So you can depth perception. Every head and eyes are different, but they designed it so that the back also would take some of the weight from the front. So the nose bridge is fine. I usually take mine out and make sure that it is really much tighter on my head, and then
that piece is removable too. If you don't have to wear the nose bridge at all. It pops out.
And the coolest thing is she can see you while wearing that because, the transparent lenses. One of the weird questions I got was, well, if you wear the HoloLens, do you really see us or do you see a 3D representation of us? It's transparent, so I actually see it.
Hands in front of it. I'm like, you can literally see through it.
We are already 3D representations of ourselves.
We're all in the Matrix.
That'd be a lot more work to digitize.
We'll talk about polygon count a little bit later.
Right.
Yep.
So with 13 terabytes of data coming in, how can it possibly crunch all of that?
It has this magical GPU called the HPU, which is the Holographic Processing Unit, custom built for the HoloLens.
Funny story about all that data that gets pushed in and flushed out. Do we want to talk about how you can just say, hey, Cortana, so it's listening for that key phrase, so there has to be a microphone that can hear it, so it's constantly taking in data and then constantly flushing it out to protect.
Yep.
Yeah.
So some of the things we'll learn, some of the key terms you learn more about gaze, gesture, and voice, and we'll cover the voice in a bit. Those are spoilers. With voice, similar to how you might talk to a Windows PC, you can also talk to HoloLens because this is, in effect, a Windows PC. It's got the CPU, GPU, HPU. It's got speakers. It has Bluetooth, Wi-Fi, little mini USB port for charging, and even a little audio port, which I believe is no longer available on my phone, but it is available on HoloLens, right?
Jack?
It's a headphone jack, right? And it lets you, treat it like a computer. And when you talk to it, you can ask Cortana to take screenshots or make videos or even build apps that can take your voice in as well. And we have a lot of stories about those too.
Also, I'm just going to crush your dreams right now. This thing is $3,000 to $5,000. Okay, moving on. So, okay, on that note, this thing is $300. So, yeah.
So good segue there. So people ask, hey, how much is this? And I get questions from independent developers, indies, and startups. And $3,000 is a lot of money. And they say, how do I get started with it? We do have a lot of free tools you can get started with today. We have an emulator, which is nothing like using the real thing, but it's a good start. And I'm local here, so I know a lot of companies, enterprise, and startups who already have devices that are always looking for developers. So if you just want to work on a project and you want to get started, let me know. I'll hook you up. No guarantees, obviously, but let me know.
But if you've done Unity development, you can do HoloLens development.
Can I see a quick show of hands of people who are familiar with Unity? Way up high. Way up. Come on. Bend the elbow.
All right. No, I see you. I see you.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay. 6 out of 24.
So I think we've talked a lot about the headset. You feel free to go over the points. I think we've made the main ones is that it's much cheaper on the end.
Yes. That's so the
I want to get to our tails.
So the primary thing over there is you have choices similar to you have different choices in PCs and Android phones. You have choices in your Windows mixed reality headsets. There's different price points. And obviously, it's literally 10 times cheaper. So it's a good place to get started with mixed reality.
These headsets, too, I think are the ones that are a little more interesting to gamers, mostly because of the lower price point, but also because the amount of games that are on them has a lot more varied. Yeah.
Steam VR. Yes,
Steam VR.
Steam VR is on there.
I don't know if they're all compatible with Steam VR yet. But yeah, that's something that we're working on for the different headsets as well. And a lot of them have games out of the box. So if the particular stuff that I've seen on there, like Luna, Super Haunt, Space Pirate, yeah. So there's a lot of stuff already on there that you might be familiar with if you played VR games. Pretty good catalog of and of course Minecraft.
We'll do Q&A after.
So pretty good catalog of stuff that's available for those for gamers. So.
And I found that it does work. It still appears to work with those devices those games that don't officially support. So I tried Space Pirate Trainer, which works, but Doom VFR, on the screen it shows the other type of controller, but I use the Windows Mixed Reality controller, which has more buttons. It has a Windows button, and then it has sticks on both sides, including the touchpad, and it seems to work fine.
So
next slide.
we're going to talk about building great things. We talked a bit about games, but a lot of these are actually being used right now for productivity in a bunch of different industries, which Amanda can detail to you.
Yeah, sure. So first of all, a little bit about me. I actually am on the student side now, so I mainly work with colleges, universities, and students when I help. So happy to help if you are a college student or something and you want to get started in game development or MR development or VR development or AI development, which is a lot of the stuff that we tie into. But one of the things that we get questioned about HoloLens a lot is like, why, like what's the purpose of this thing? Why the price point, etc. And I've always felt personally, even just trying and owning the device, is that it's very useful outside of a narrow range of like entertainment, which is to say you can think of it as like, oh, you could watch movies on it. You could play certain games on it. You could. But there's also a lot of other stuff that's super useful and cool to do with it in the world of education and in the world of kind of manufacturing and assembly and communication. So you could have there's a really, really cool demo online called the Portation demo, where it's kind of like a teleconference where you like literally have somebody across the room or across the country, and then you put the headset on, and then it's like they're sitting right there in front of you and talking to you. And they can even interact with stuff in the environment as long as the environments are laid out the same. It's totally weird. It's like that person is really there and they're being fed directly to you from however far. It's like a 3D Skype call. So just like Star Wars, and that's just one of the things that you can do with it. I've seen a lot of medical training applications where they're doing things like living anatomy with the body 3D. You can take it apart. You can rotate the inside of the person, look at the lungs and the heart and everything. And there was a 2-person application developed where one person was the surgeon and one person was the student. And they actually had a Bluetooth capable device to show you like where they would make the incision on the body. And then the other person could follow like the lines in the air as to where they could do that. So it was extremely like, if somebody's trying to help somebody remotely do a surgery, you can draw on the person. It's crazy stuff like that. So
obviously not been approved for actual use.
No, but this is all stuff that I've seen prototyped that, in some day in the future, we will maybe have these things. And that was prototyped in one of our offices in Philly. So manufacturing, maybe you have to work on something like a jet engine where it's expensive and prohibitive to actually take apart a jet engine and show people what is like it's like on the inside. But if we have this mock-up that's a 3-dimensional full-size mock-up of a jet engine that reacts the same way in terms of like what the pieces and parts are, you can feel like you've really had the opportunity to work with it in 3 dimensions as opposed to like in a 2-dimensional picture or on a screen.
You think I could stick my head in a jet engine?
Yeah, you stick your head in a jet engine, right? And in situations where maybe training on a live situation is dangerous, and that's also useful. So we've talked to people who want to use it for building inspection, like highlighting problems and walk around with your headset on, like, oh, I circled this part of the wall because there's a problem there, and then somebody later could like, take that whole file and walk through a virtual mock-up of the building and say, okay, here's the problems that they found, without having to physically go to the site. So those are a lot of other uses that we have besides like, oh, you can game with it, which you can. There's lots of cool stuff on there for gaming, but there's lots of other things you can do with it too.
Yeah, and also think about the fact that, it might cost $3,000, but if you are doing surgery on cadavers are expensive. You have to replace those and find new ones.
Well, what I always say is for the HoloLens, the reason it's $3,000 is because it's the entire computer.
That too, but also it's priced appropriately for the value it provides, especially if you have a use case where you are needing like the need to constantly have something new. You have a hologram version of it. It's reusable.
Am I talking on input as well? I can do it quick. So input for HoloLens right now, or the current input we have, gaze, gesture, anything with Bluetooth, so gamepads, keyboards, anything that has a Bluetooth sensor you can use for input. So if you have a Bluetooth keyboard, you could type with that, which is handy because typing with your fingers can be really slow.
There's also a tiny clicker.
There's a little clicker.
Of like clicking, like tapping.
Which is kind of like the button on a mouse. That's all it does. It's just the click. And the gesture is a tap gesture like this, and then we have a menu gesture where you kind of open up like this. They call it bloom. And you can pinch and drag, so you can kind of move stuff around with your hand. The clicker is useful for if your hand gets tired of being up like this. Despite how cool they make it look in Minority Report, after a while your hand gets tired, so you kind of close it.
I think Bluetooth is a key word there because if you had any other Bluetooth device, you can imagine which could pretty much take any form or take the existing clicker we have, which is super tiny, and maybe strap it to a 3D printed device, and you can make up your own games with the Bluetooth.
And for the immersive headsets, the ones that are the opaque ones, there's a controller that they have. It's a specific controller, depending on the. Some of them have that more of a touch controller kind of setup.
Yeah, so it's in the flyer. I didn't bring it with me, but it's in the flyer picture.
Yeah, cool. And then voice, where there's a voice activation. You can speak into it, and you can program your own voice commands for it, which can be useful in a lot of situations, especially if you need something precisely to be done.
But we don't want to talk too much about this because we have a whole separate slide about best practices and horror stories with it. If you guys are developers or y'all are developers, we have a bunch of resources. Feel free to take a picture of this slide if you are so interested in getting involved. There's like a bunch of links there that you can go to start getting involved, start getting developer resources.
And if you haven't tried Unity 3D and you're interested in any kind of game development or 3D development, Unity 3D is a great starting point. It's not the only game engine out there, but it is very compatible with all the stuff that we do with mixed reality. And it's a good, it's got a lot of power for what you get, and the price is right because it's free.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Until you get the pro version.
Tails. So starting with art, people think that they can do virtual reality or mixed reality by going, I have this really nice high poly game and I'm just going to click the go to VR button in Unity and deploy, and it'll be exactly the same and it'll be super fun. And it's, lo and behold, it's not. It runs terrible. Remember when we tried to do that with mobile games? Try to put whole high poly, don't put Skyrim on your mobile phone. Like, that's just a bad idea for a lot of reasons.
Do we need to take a step back and explain polygons?
I feel like in this gaming community, we actually might not, for once. Triangles. Lots of them.
I come from an art background, and so I've been doing a lot of art and animation for the past couple, I want to say decade or so at this point. And one of the things that has surprised me as somebody who came from a game development background and an game art background in particular, was the fact that a lot of people out there that are trying to develop this stuff for the first time have zero clue as to how it works. They just come to me and say, how do I get the picture in there? And I'm kind of like, well, you have to have an artist. And then they get mad. They're like, what do you mean I need an artist to make the art? Can't I just scan something and have it magically appear inside? Well, there's devices that can do that for sure. There's different, the Holo Portation demo does a type of scanning. Those devices are typically prohibitively expensive for the average developer, especially if you're just getting started. And you'd be better off hiring an artist to fine tune your results anyway, make them look good and pretty because they know what they're doing. And I personally love giving that answer because I have an art degree. So when I'm like, hey, you know what? We're not obsolete yet. My job hasn't been replaced by a machine. But I've had people say, well, couldn't we replace you with a machine? No. Yeah, right.
I've seen robots draw pictures, though. That's pretty cool, but it's still not the same.
Even if you have like say a high poly scan of something that is a high fidelity scan, which is very common in medical or very common in manufacturing. Say you're a car company and you have this extremely high fidelity scan, an extremely high fidelity CAD model of this car that you want to then put into a virtual world. Chances are good that is not going to be fast enough, because when you're working in virtual mixed reality, you have to prioritize speed and frame rate of the processor over how beautiful the thing is, or else your user's gonna lose you essentially. And people think, well, the more realistic, the better. But that is not necessarily the case. It's actually much better to have a fast frame rate than it is to have a realistic model.
Yeah, and some of our customers have really realistic 3D models, such as airplane manufacturers, car manufacturers. You try to bring those in HoloLens, and they've learned very quickly that you build lower poly models first, specifically for these environments, and they work fine. You didn't just bring in the same car model you use for maybe a commercial.
Yeah. Don't use the same car model for a commercial. That sounds like a bad time. Like you're gonna have a bad time.
I also had somebody come up to me and say they really wanted to do like a psychology application where they had a person that you interacted with in the virtual world, and they were like a realistic high fidelity person, and you could talk to them and ask them questions. And the way they had done it in the past was they had used video clips. Kind of like a Her Story type of interaction, right, with video clips. And I said, well, okay, it's not impossible, but you do realize that like a high fidelity human model is very expensive to animate and create, and you have to have like a dedicated artist who understands how to do facial animation and everything like that. And again, there's just kind of still this perception that you could just scan something in that it will without having like super special equipment. So you can scan stuff, but you do need really special cameras to do it. It's not something you can just like point this device at and just like zap somebody and suck them into the device. It's really not how it works. So
media has given us a completely false perception about that.
So value and treasure your artists and sound designers, which I'm sure we'll go into on a future slide.
Nope. UI first.
Okay.
UI is important.
Yeah.
Well, it's like I feel like it was a natural transition from art.
Absolutely.
Because, user interface. We got to make the assets pretty and all sorts of stuff. But all of us have actually, all four of us were on one particular hackathon where we got to do a lot of fun things with UI.
We did, and we've mentioned those terms a bunch of times: gaze, gesture, voice. But what do all these things mean? It's supposed to come naturally. You may have heard NUI, which we used when we started developing Kinect at Microsoft, natural user interaction. So gaze is just you looking. You're doing it right now, right? Whatever you look at, you're gazing. So with these devices, let's say I put on the HoloLens and I look at something, I'm gazing at it, and it knows where I'm looking at, not because my eyeballs are looking at it, but where my head is looking at. So it always assumes that this is your head, your eyes are here, and if you're wearing the HoloLens, you're looking in this direction. Even if you have your eyes closed, those holograms aren't going to disappear. They'll still be there, although you wouldn't know that because it's just like the refrigerator light. You never know if it's there if your eyes are closed, right? But it's there. It's shooting light into your eyes, so that's your gaze. And the gesture, we've talked about a bunch of these different gestures that we do. And the way it tracks it is it looks at what's in front of you. So typically you wouldn't start doing the bloom gesture over here. You would do it in front of you. And that's a valid question. People say, do I get any peripheral vision with this thing? Like, can I see here and here? So you see what's in front of you, so you do interactions in front of you.
It's like a cone.
Like a holographic frame.
Mm-hmm. And that's by design, right?
When we look at things, we don't look at them like this. We look at them like this by turning our head and looking at something.
Yeah,
this is weird. This is natural.
Yeah, if you want to actually interact with something, like I'm making eye contact with Adina right now because I'm talking to Adina. But I'm not talking to Amanda. Hey, Amanda, how was the party last night?
That'd be
I want to turn and look at Amanda.
Yeah.
So when you're wearing the HoloLens, like you put the cursor in the center of your screen, you like put it on the hologram, and then you can speak or click or say select, and then you'll interact with that thing.
Also, gaze. Oh, sorry, gaze is not eye tracking. It's more of a general tracking of where your gaze, your whole face is pointed. So it's not like specific. Like you can move your eyes around and it won't change your gaze, but you move your head around and it changes your gaze.
And it takes some getting used to, but. It's easy enough to kind of let your hand go, and like this thing is it's not magic. It does have to actually see your hand to be able to detect the gestures. So like it's nice people like to go and like do some dancing, but that's not quite how it works.
That's more of a Kinect game, right? So, so the project we worked on together was for a major corporation. They wanted an application where you could visually see their network topology. Basically, they have computer servers in their offices around the world, and they want to see information, maybe server names, IP address, location, so on. Think about anything you'd like to see visually. Movies have these all the time. Every time you turn on a computer in a movie, there's like some 3D floating things all around. They wanted to build this in real life, so we helped them build it over a 2-day hackathon, and we had these 3D things, and we're clicking on it. Well, where does the data come from, right? There's some storage in here, but we can also connect to the cloud, because you have Wi-Fi in here. So we're able to connect to their network and get data from what we call an Azure function. It's some serverless code stuff we've been cooking up at Microsoft. And that brings in data from somewhere else and displays it on the screen, which means you can have an infinite amount of data as you're pointing and clicking at things because it's always coming from somewhere else.
Yeah, that way you don't have to like hard code every little bit of network. And if your network thing changes, like How would you update that? Nah. We pull that data and visualize it in real time. That's fun.
Good for security too, because you don't want to lose one of these things and then lose all your data with it.
Yeah, but the tale from the trench about UI specifically for this project was actually really interesting. Did you want to talk about that, or
yeah, you can jump right in.
So I got a build of this project, and I put on the HoloLens, and I tested it out. And what I noticed was I was seeing the three-dimensional floating boxes, but there was not a very intuitive user interface to it. And I tried air tapping on it. I tried saying select, but I couldn't really get it to move or do anything with it. And it wasn't until like I took the HoloLens off, looked through the code, like kind of dug into the GitHub and looked through the source code, and I saw that in one of the files he had some microphone managers in there, and he was looking for key phrases like tilt up, rotate left, rotate right. And I did not know that those were the magic phrases. It was not in writing. It wasn't anywhere for me to see. So it was not discoverable. So like an interactive user interface, it needs to be discoverable, and you need to have redundant forms of input. Just because you have it programmed through voice using the microphone, it doesn't mean I'm going to know that unless I have like secret knowledge of like open sesame passwords. So you need to make that very obvious and very discoverable for end users who don't know your program.
Yeah, also a difference between emulators versus real hardware. I don't know if you've ever seen this T-shirt that said "works on my machine." I worked on the code, and it was working when I'm clicking on things, pulling data from the internet. When I put on the device, nothing was working, and I realized that there were some capabilities you have to turn on within Unity that then carries over to the app that gets deployed on the device that enables things like microphone, internet access, so on. Every time you install an app on your phone, some apps will ask you, can you give it access to this, and this? You can say yes or no. Same thing with apps that you put on the HoloLens. You have to get permission. And I hadn't thought to do that initially. And I was thinking, why isn't this working? So finally I figured it out. And it was working okay.
That's a good one.
Yeah, I wanted to change the slide because you're talking about redundancy. And when you have 3 different types of input, isn't that nice? You can choose 1 or 2 of them, and that's really not what it's about. It's not about choosing a primary and then secondary way. It's redundancies to make it better, to make the experience more natural. We don't just look at things and that's it. We look at things and then do something with them or talk to them. Like, it's not the one or the other. That'd be, nope, I'm not going to look at you, but I'm going to touch you. That'd be weird. It'd be nice to have both.
A big question I get a lot from people that are asking about the gesture system is, well, how do I add different gestures? And then I always say, why? What gesture is it that's missing that you need? And they don't really know, then they're like, okay. If you ever think like the input from a gesture is not robust enough because tapping isn't what I need, get a controller and use that as your input. Don't try to pack a bunch of different stuff into gestures, because when you try to be like, okay, I want to tap with this finger and then a tap with this finger is going to do something different. It's not going to be able to read that kind of strange.
Also, that's hard.
It's
hard to remember. You have to label your fingers to remember how to do something.
So we support Bluetooth controller. And in fact, one of the cooler applications that I've seen, and it's out of Carnegie Mellon, and he uses a Bluetooth piano keyboard. And teaches you how to play piano with the HoloLens, and it was really, really cool. So that was a really fun one to work with. So think about not necessarily how do I expand the gesture system, which honestly is not probably the best use of your coding time. Think about instead like what alternative input would be really suitable for this application. I think you're going to have much better time thinking about it that way. If you look back at the days of old arcade games where not everything was standardized to just like a stick and buttons, instead there was roller balls and there was paddles and there was all kinds of stuff. We can do that because we have IoT devices now where you can build customized controllers for your applications. And I would absolutely, like, if you have any hardware bugging you, encourage you to do that, because that's going to make the right input for whatever you're creating. And then the voice input is very robust. It's very easy. You can just type whatever phrase and it'll hear it. It's crazy. So it's so fast and easy to use. So if you do want to have like a lot more details, just be sure, like Adina points out, or as Sarah points out, like have a menu of options that people can choose from so they know what to say, because they're not going to magically figure out what to say.
So when Amanda said old arcade games, in case you're like me and you get all nostalgic, you're in the right place, because I hear there are a bunch of old arcade games somewhere in this building.
Yes. Yes.
The only time that you would probably, one day this will be doable, but program the Naruto gestures to be able to like, only thing I could imagine needing custom gestures for, because everything else doesn't make any sense.
It's kind of Okami style painting, that's where a controller would be very good.
Oh,
yeah.
So I have a tale. So a couple weeks ago, I went to an internal hackathon. That is one that we had at the Microsoft Space Mothership in Seattle. And we were hacking on a bunch of different projects where we were doing the new technology thing. Like, this thing doesn't exist yet. Let's make it exist. So a different service we have, unrelated to mixed reality, is something called LUIS, which is language understanding. That is, I can pick apart the different pieces of your sentence and map them to go do a specific thing. So it actually, you can train a model and have it learn if you keep speaking to it. We usually hook this up with chatbots, but we wanted to do something. So this has speech to text. So it has some amount of like speech understanding, but it doesn't have like language understanding. So we wanted to hook up the language understanding service with our mixed reality. And so I wrote a plugin to do it, but the way that it parses it is completely backwards. So we care, when we're building these applications, we care about the stuff. We care about what specifically is in my scene. What am I interacting with? How many boxes are littered across the floor? But the language understanding doesn't care about that. It cares about what you want to do with it. Do you want me to rotate the box? Do you want me to make the box bigger? Also, it could be a sphere or it could be a cylinder. I don't care what it is, but you want me to rotate. You want me to make big. You want me to action. And so hooking those up was kind of odd because they care about different things. One of them is completely generic in one system. The other is like, no, I need to know what you're referring to. If you want me to rotate a sphere and we only have cubes, we're going to have a bad time. So that was a fun challenge to figure out. We managed to create a mapping system, and that was kind of fun.
I have another tale for that.
Oh, yeah?
So one of the projects I put on GitHub, it's called Holo Targets. So the whole point is that you stand in the room and all these different beach balls start appearing all around you. And they also make squeaky sounds when they appear. And because it's got spatial sound, when a beach ball appears here and you're not looking at it, if you recall, you're primarily seeing things in front of you, but because of the sound, you know where to look in 3D space. So the HoloLens tracks not only the room, but also where you are in the room and how high your head is, how low it is. And so the way I do it is I put up a fake ceiling right above me, and that's how I track where the user is. And then relative to that ceiling, I can track where I'm making all these beach balls appear. And what's the point of having things appear if you can't shoot them, right? So every time you do this with your finger, it shoots out this yellow projectile at the beach balls, and when the balls get hit, they'll just bump against each other and fall straight down. It could fall on the floor, it could fall on the table, on top of someone's head, or even on a chair and start rolling around on it. So these virtual objects, they interact with each other, but also with the physical objects around the room. And at the same time, I'm using the sound to help myself within the game as well. So again, it's a great way to get started with the different technologies that HoloLens offers. So
the first app that I ever wrote, I decided to also make things that spawned randomly around me, and I thought, I'm going to be great at this game. I'll know exactly where they spawn, even though it's random, because I set the variable, and I'll be great at this game. I was terrible at this game because I had no sound effect. I had no idea where they were appearing around me, so I had to keep looking. Oh, and maybe it was behind me, but I never think to look behind me. And so I was terrible at the game. And then I added like a woo dropping sound effect. I knew where everything was. It makes all the difference to have a sound effect, like actually, especially in real life.
And what's your game called?
Oh, well, that one was like a cassette demo, but the thing I turned it into is called Fruit Warrior MR, which is in no way related to the popular game Fruit Ninja VR. But if you want to, I created it so that you would have an actual full end-to-end game that you would be able to create and learn all of the aspects of what we've been talking about this whole time of, spatial awareness and gaze, gesture, voice, and all of these other fun things.
She also has a really great tutorial for it.
Yeah.
So
it's like
you can
a
actually
whole
create
workshop.
the whole game yourself and try it out. So
5 stars, highly recommended.
I see that we are approaching the end of time, and I want to be able to share a little more horror stories, if you don't mind. We've been to a lot of hackathons.
Juicy.
Yeah, a lot of hackathons.
And if people still have questions that are unanswered from all this, grab us after because we'll be around.
That's also true. So this year we've done the MIT hackathons a couple of times, but usually we demand, and we should actually make sure to demand this for realsies. No pretensies. We need a 101 how to get started up and running workshop, because it was 9 p.m. on I don't remember if it was the first or second day, but people were trying to figure out how to do basic stuff in Unity, and I felt so bad. I just took everyone, come here, gather around, children. It's time for us to learn how to put an object in 3D space.
Oh, by the way, is anybody here familiar with Global Game Jam?
Oh, it's about to happen. You should.
Yeah, it's about to happen. It's in a couple of weeks. And if you're interested in learning the basics of how to make stuff in a game engine, Global Game Jam is a great time to learn because it's designed for beginners to make something really fast, or for pros to make something really fast, really all skill levels. And when we say hackathon, that's a game jam is basically similar to that. You have a small limited amount period of time in order to create something. And when we have in the past tried to do hackathons for mixed reality, there's an additional challenges technically in getting people up to speed with the process of game development. So if you are interested in mixed reality, like make a game, and then we'll help you understand the 3D engine part.
Yeah, it's really fun, and there's locations everywhere. If any of you are close or could get to New York, Playcrafting and Microsoft team up every year to put on Global Game Jam, and last year we were the 3rd largest in the world and the biggest in the U.S. So, yeah, we had like over 400 people like in our office. It was so much fun.
Philadelphia does a game jam every month. Yeah, literally.
Okay, fine.
No, but yeah.
Yeah, fine.
But they're never that huge. They're never 400 people. That's huge.
It was fun, especially in New York, in like one space. That is kind of a lot.
That's a lot.
Yeah, we have other tales from the trench too.
Yeah.
You get to share one now.
So you said that you wanted to have like a dedicated 101. This is how you get set up for all this stuff. Now, I think that's a great idea. And when it, or if it exists, the other thing you have to keep in mind is keeping all of the versions up to date. So I went to a hackathon, met with some students, and we kind of got bogged down on the first day in different versions of Unity. There's like Unity 4.6, there's Unity 5, there's Unity 5.3.6.
Oh, you're forgetting because there's now like
2017.1,
4.6.1, 4.6.2, 4.6. Yeah, no, they're
Unity,
all different.
Unity 2017.
Yeah,
Point 2.
The holographic toolkit that Microsoft creates to help you develop for Unity in Holographic or Windows Mixed Reality, which is used to call it Holographic Toolkit. It's now called Mixed Reality Toolkit, which is just one of the ways that things have changed. Is open source, which is very nice. So you can get it from Microsoft's GitHub. So if you're interested in looking at all the code, you absolutely can. But it can sometimes be a version behind the Unity version. And that's the kind of thing you have to watch out for in terms of syncing up your versions.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so
there's usually notes on there too.
Yeah.
So on the installation page for HoloLens tools, you'll see notes on which versions have been tested to work.
And that is so important to pay attention to. It's like the moral of this story is pay attention to the versions you're using. Because if you're a version behind, you can get compiler errors and you won't know why. So yeah, there's like Visual Studio 2015, Visual Studio 2017, Unity 2017, and it used to be called the Holo Toolkit. Now it's called the MRTK.
Yeah.
And so my tale from the trench is just getting bogged down with different software versions. So that is just something to keep in mind.
Well, you want to use bleeding edge technology, then you got to deal with the fact that it's buggy and it's constantly being updated. If you want something that works, go use something from 2005.
It
Even
works.
not anymore. Things are going
It
too
works.
fast. You can't like
It works. It's just open source,
There's a reason they call it the bleeding edge. It's because you're gonna bleed.
That's true. Yeah. Here's a tale. Not everything is software. Sometimes it's literal devices that you can't leave out in the open.
Yeah.
We're not leaving this desk without putting these away or having someone to watch them. Imagine when you have 15 to 20 of them and one person who needs a pee break.
Yeah, at the hackathon I was at, it was I don't know, 24, maybe 48 hours, but I was short-sighted. I flew too close to the sun and my wings melted and I fell due to my own pride. But I did not enlist anybody to help me take a second shift and watch them overnight. I was like, this is going to be a fun slumber party. I'm going to stay up all night and help everybody out. And I had 2 HoloLens devices, and there were 4 teams of 4. So I believe there were 16 individuals who they all had to like hot swap the HoloLenses to test their test their programs as they were developing. Sharing is caring, and the deadline was approaching like the very next day, so every minute counted, every hour counted. If I took them home, or if I took them to the hotel and slept for 8 hours or 6 hours, that would be like 6 or 8 hours where they couldn't test at all. They'd have to use an emulator, and that was like critical crunch time for them. So
you're so much nicer than we are. We just tell them like, nope, sorry, we gotta sleep, bye. We take them.
I took one for the teams. I did it.
Wow.
I definitely did
too
it.
nice.
I was too nice. But like, I would do it again because I'm so passionate about just helping people succeed, but I would be smart. I'd work smarter, not harder. I would ask for someone to take a shift for me so I could go and someone could watch the HoloLenses.
I'm pretty sure this is just difference between Midwest and East Coast culture too. Like, we're not nice in New York.
I think we're at time. Are we at time?
We are.
Yeah, unfortunately. So, yeah.
Thank you, Slide, with all of our info. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, and
everybody.
grab us if you have questions. I'm hanging out, so we'll be back Mages tomorrow. I will be here as well. So
We have like a lot more stories too. Like there's more stories that can fill in like 1 hour slot. So yeah, just come talk to us. We'll share our stories.
If you,
I did want to add, so one thing you said about being helpful. In addition to these college hackathons, we also have open hackathons for developers in the community where we bring our HoloLenses. So those are usually scheduled officially through Microsoft. If you're interested, check out the HoloLens site and stay tuned. You can try out HoloLens yourself at some of these hackathons.
if you see me around, just walk up to me and say HoloLens, and then I'll know you were here.
Try to do it in the loudest, most obnoxious way possible.
No, please don't. I startle easily. I'm quite jumpy.
we got to sync up our 3DS too over here.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.